Look, if I could stay awake last time, which was fresh jet lag, I should be able to stay awake this time. But yes, so
Ethel's in New York.
Ethel is in New York for a week.
Having a wonderful time.
She is
Might not want to come home.
Oh, I doubt she will. She comes back to school and exams. Why would she want to come home? No, they did. The whole school does some. They learn outside of school, but it's a program internationally where they learn. It's called the Chidam. It's 5 books, and they learn it over the course of 5 years, and it's all 613 mitzvahs, but in great detail. They learn where they learn it from in the Torah, who it applies to, where it applies, what exactly it is, all the details in great detail. And they take tests on it a number of times in the year, like different, first they break it up into like 3. And in their year, if you get over a certain percentage, you get to go on a trip to New York. And then if you get over, once it's the men starting to come, we are not letting them in. They can do their own letting in. And over a certain, like the top 2 or whatever are in the final, kind of like a spelling bee, but not spelling, it's Chidam bee, in the final thing in the Sure, I can enter you in the Chidam. I think it's only for teenagers, but I can definitely find out if you would like to.
Content really, rather than
The book is at Pam, did I show you the book once? The Yahada's book. I think I did. You would love the book, Sally, because it's not just, you can learn it with pleasure. I would say you can buy it. They're not cheap. You can buy them here. They're not cheap. Well, no, it's not just Ethel, because Yossi was learning it this year and Diddles was learning it this year. And so it's they're not cheap books, but they are extremely well done, very well done. They are beautiful, and it's not just the plain basic mitzvah. It's got stories to help teach it and side notes, and it's beautifully done. But yeah, it ends up costing us a lot of money. Well, you can start by looking. She's doing book 4, 5. I don't know. You could start by looking at book 1. There you go, which Yossi was doing this year. No, you can't start looking at book 1. Yossi lost it. Never mind. You can start by looking at book 2. Okay. So we are on. Is it here? Page 92. Oh, the page numbers in here. And talking about sure. Items, people, terms. There's lots of different things, some of which people might know, some of which you might not know. Some, as I was looking through, there's a lot of words that get thrown about that you might use, but not exactly sure what it means, or what it refers to, or something like that. So hopefully we'll be able to clarify some of that. What's the role of different people or different objects, and all of that. So there's lots and lots of different bits to read. Shall we start at one end and everyone can read one bit? That way we don't have to jump around. Does that make sense? Paula, would you like to start? Huh?
I was just looking to know why 10, why 12 or 9. It just says that you have to have patience.
I did end up finished preparing, so just start with number 1.
The object is the synagogue. Synagogue is a place of Jewish worship. In addition to housing the sanctuary for several, synagogues often serve as a center point of Jewish life. The word synagogue is the Greek parallel to the Hebrew term Beit Knesset, house of gathering. It's also referred to as a shul, a Yiddish word relating to the English word school. Thus named, so the Torah is studied there as well. Synagogues we found virtually everywhere wherever there are Jews, and have been used since the Babylon exile. The exact dimensions of the synagogue vary, reflecting the culture, needs, means, and tastes of those who built it and use it. However, you can generally expect to have chairs for pews, arranged in such a way that the worshippers are facing towards Jerusalem, once the site of the Holy Temple, and the place through which all prayers ascend to God.
So that's what a synagogue is. In Hebrew, you would also often call it a Beit Knesset, which is a house of gathering. So it's not only a place to daven, it's not only a place to learn. Often, especially nowadays, it's a central point for Jewish life. You might also come across the word shtibel. Does anyone know what a shtibel is?
A shawl in a house, sort of thing, where
Yes. So it comes right. So it comes from the Yiddish word shtub, which means a house. So it is
Be quiet.
shtub. Shtub. Stum is quiet. Shtub with a B. No, not with an N.
No.
SHTUB. Shtub is a house. Okay.
That's what it was, house.
So a shtub is a house. So shtibel comes from that, and it's often more cozy, if you will, because, well, the way it describes it here is the same place you use to sit and daven will be the same place you then put out all the kiddush food, right? It's all sort of happens in the same room, in the same place. It's often not as structured as a shul. So somebody said more informal. Not that wasn't the word that was used. Brenda, did you say that? It was more smaller, more Hamish. So
the one in Northampton, it's called the Steeple.
the sheeple. There you go.
But in cemetery grounds, the place of prayer, it's called.
Not very women, but
That's
Really?
We all have that.
So it seems to be they're all can all be mixed, you know, the words, but it seems to be a Beit Knesset was a more structured, organized, formal types of a shul. And the shtibel was a smaller, more Hamish in someone's house and someone's front room kind of a thing. Now I think it's not here, so I'll just go through. And now, anyone heard of a base medrash or a Beit medrash? We do have one there.
Yes.
So it's a house of study. It can also be used for davening. So it can also be used for prayers. Often in a shul this size, you will have the larger shul space, not because you take it down for Jewish care or anything else, but just a larger shul that had pews and was the more Shabbos, Yom Tov, more formal, larger setting things, bar mitzvah, whatever it was. And you had a base medrash for regular everyday davening where you just had maybe a minyan or 15 people or whatever it was. But also often a base medrash was sort of more the other way around, in the sense that a Beit Knesset, a shul was a place to daven and you also learned there, whereas a base medrash was a place to sit and learn and they also davened there. So that is
Depends on the what your what's the word I want?
the focal point, basically.
Yes. The focal point of the shul, the main shul is the davening and the prayers, the services, but the focus of the Beit Midrash is the learning rather than the anything else.
Yes. So that's the sort of difference, the difference there. Any questions so far? So far, so good? Okay, Sally, would you like to read the next one?
Minyan. Possible, a person should always pay with the congregation in the synagogue. The minimum number of people required to form a congregation is 10 Jewish men over 13. This is called a minyan. Saying prayers with a minyan is far more desirable than praying alone. Communal prayer is accepted immediately. No minyan is available, one may pray alone. Certain parts of the service may only be said if the minyan is present. These include Kaddish, Baruch Hu, repetition of the Amidah, Kedusha and the reading of the Torah.
So we have 10 men, 10 Jewish men over the age of 13, makes a minimum of 10 men, I should say. And it's better to daven with a minyan. There are certain parts that you only say with a minyan. Interesting, the notes I have here. So where do we get the source of 10 from? So interestingly, I always learned that the source of 10 was from Sodom. That
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of, yeah.
was the source of Sodom, where Hashem said to Avram, Sodom is a horrible place.
Yeah.
I'm going to destroy it, and there's nothing you could do about it. And he said, if there's 50 righteous people, will you save the city? He said, there's not, forget it. He said, if there's 40 righteous people, will you save the city? No,
Yeah.
forget it. He went all the way down to 10, and after that he stopped. He said, if there's not even 10 righteous people, fine, I'll believe you. But what I read today was that the source is that when Moshe sent spies before they went, when they were in the desert, when they sent spies into Israel to spy out the land, they sent one from each tribe, and 2 of them came back with a positive report, and the other 10 came back with a negative report. Hold on, 10 of them returned and issued a report concluding that it was not a conquerable land. God was extremely disappointed with their lack of faith in his abilities. He turned to Moshe and Aaron, telling them, how long will this evil assembly provoke the Jewish nation to complain against me? From here it is deduced that an assembly is comprised of 10 men. So because there were 10 of them, he called them an assembly. So that's where the idea of an assembly for a minyan is 10.
However, you can, in the morning, when you say your own prayers and you get up in the morning, that is said individually.
Right, so if you don't have a minyan, you daven on your own. But if you're davening on your own, you won't be able to say certain parts. Kaddish is one of them. Oh, it did have it somewhere further on. It wasn't in order. Kaddish was one of them. Obviously that's for not just your type, but there's certain Kaddishim that are said as part of the davening with the minyan. Baruch Hu is the blessings before, no, after Yishtabach. Gosh, I haven't been to a morning minyan in a long time. The repetition of the Amidah. So when we repeat the Amidah and have Kedusha, Nakdisha, I can't think of any tunes at the moment, so forget that. Or reading the Torah. So we read the Torah Monday mornings, Thursday mornings, Shabbos morning, and Shabbos afternoon. And if there is not a minyan, they won't be able to read the Torah on any of those days. So we need a minyan. A minyan is a group of men, and there are certain parts that you cannot say without a minyan present. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Sally, where they get 10 from?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
When we were on the lockdown, Jeff and I used to do a little service together, but we used to read the Torah. on a
Right,
Saturday
so,
morning.
but you did, but you didn't.
What we
You
did,
read the portion
Yes,
from the Chumash,
yeah.
which is a book. You didn't take out a Sefer Torah.
No,
with a
it's just
scroll.
right.
So that's not the same thing.
You didn't call it hidden in their front door, right? You didn't call up 7 men for an aliyah, right? Right? So that's
Had 7 sons. You designed 7 sons, but they weren't right.
no, they're not over bar
Where
mitzvah.
does 7 come from? Call up.
Okay, not sure if it's, I think it's later. Oh, maybe it's not. Hold on. I can't remember which part was here and which part was later. It's we're gonna come to it.
Okay.
So you know when you can't say Kaddish, and obviously people have to say Kaddish when they're in the meeting. Why is that not a bit unfair? Like, why is that one of the prayers that?
Confusion about that, wasn't there, during COVID? People got really
There
upset.
was, people were quite upset.
Yeah, one of the reasons is that it's
it's good not to be alone when you're mourning.
Oh, okay.
But if you can get into a meeting, yeah, be surrounded by other people.
Also,
say that, sorry, to introvert people. People, so rather the.
you can come to a minion and don't actually have to interact with anybody. There are people who do that,
Yeah.
trust me. But also the idea of a minion is whenever you have, so I don't know if you've ever seen or heard of whenever there's a tragedy, right? You will gather people together for prayer. Why? We can all sit in our own homes and say the same thing, right? So, but it's more than that. You have the idea of power in numbers, right? Like you have it in anything else. The more people, if you have a group of people together, your prayers are sort of united and you have a power of prayer, right? Much stronger than if you're just on your own. And what this was a rabbi who answered a question on Chabad.org, because that's where I get a lot of my info. And what he put, and it was really beautiful to read, is that when thinking about this, right, if you can have 9 people in the room and it's not a minion, one more person comes, it shows the power of one person, the importance of each and every single one. You need 10 people, one person, and it's a big mitzvah to make up a minion, to be the 10th person in a minion. The 11th, nobody cares about them anymore.
But by that token, the 9th person, isn't that important?
No, it's
Okay.
number 10. Number 10 will be called the minion man. They will make, yeah, they can walk in together and be 9 and 10. No, but to think that each and every, if one person walks out of the room, if someone goes to the toilet and they're about to say Kaddish, they either wait for them or they can't say it. They carry on. If you have exactly 10 people, each and every person is important. That's really a powerful message as well.
Yeah, just another thing is that I know somebody, I won't say this person's name, but has been bereaved, and he's not really much of a shul goer, but he has been trying to go to shul, say Kaddish somewhere, and he's got a lot of comfort from it, from going in and getting up in the morning and being surrounded
Routine.
by the other people.
Probably also partly the routine, getting
The
up
routine,
and
yeah.
out
All
and
that,
going.
it's all that, yeah.
Can I just ask the question? It's
Yeah.
not to do with shul, but it's just personal one. When you go to the grounds and you visit your parents and then you're just 1 or 2 people, would you say Kaddish or would you say something else?
So you wouldn't say Kaddish because you need a minion for Kaddish. But something I'm going to say, which I read somewhere at some point in my 67 pages of notes, which is why I kept dozing off. The idea of structured prayer came about during the Babylonian exile, much later on than we realize or think about, because they were starting to, a lot of people couldn't read or didn't remember the ideas, the text. Before that, they used to use their own words essentially, and they were exiled, so they weren't using Hebrew anymore, and they were mixing up all different things, which is when they made a structured prayer books. And before that, people used to use their own whatever from the heart, and a lot of people say, well, why men? Why is it focused on men? So it does come up later, but one of the reasons is because women are not bound by time mitzvahs, and because it's this time, that time, there are 3 very specific times to daven. Yes, we are required to daven, but not with a minion and not to hear the laning, and not we still have the same requirements to daven twice a day, to say the Shema and the Amidah twice a day. But often you'll find that the same structure isn't put in place for women. Why? Not only can we pray from the heart, we're innately more spiritual and have more of an ability to do that. So there, as far as I know, there's no specific prayer to say if you're visiting the grounds. I don't know. There you go, but not Kaddish.
So you can't,
Julian says something, I think it's
I don't know. I thankfully do not know.
so you can't say Kaddish unless you're in a million.
Correct.
So when, I mean, sometimes when we've gone to burial places abroad, like we went to Thailand and we went up to the River Kwai and we went around and looked for the Jewish graves. Well, we didn't know that we couldn't, so we did say Kaddish. Now we know, so we don't. But it was very much comfort to do that. I felt that they knew that we were here, you know. It's something I'm sorry, funny enough, each Jewish grave had a rose on it. That one, and the rose.
What is that?
Yes, somebody must have gone round, but just what
Yeah,
roses
it's
on
not
them.
the fashion to put photographs or.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, just talking about that women don't say Kaddish, do they?
They can.
We can.
Okay, that's really. Then I don't. Something.
Sorry.
Voluntary.
That's on your daughter.
Yeah.
Then I think it's very the to say, otherwise, but I can't.
So often someone might
Someone will stand up.
get a man to say Kaddish if the woman can't always be there. I actually, when I was in primary school, I went to, long story, but I didn't daven in school. I used to go to Minyan every morning with my father, and I got to know somebody really, really well, a lady who was saying Kaddish, and she went every single morning. So that was my davening partner. You can. It will, yes and no.
It's very recent. Yeah, more recently, more people. I didn't say Kaddish with my dad, because I didn't even think about it, but when my mum died 5 years ago. Yeah, I did, and Debbie has, and Jeanette did.
Come back to being a thing.
Yeah.
I think-
But you can only do it, you can only do it if there's a million women.
Right.
Yeah, so if like one time Julian was going to be away. And I wanted to go to Shul that day to say Kaddish, so I checked with Graham Taylor if he'd be able to say Kaddish. As long as there was a million, somebody's got, if there was nobody there saying Kaddish that morning, somebody would have to say it. I couldn't just say it on my own.
Oh, okay.
So somebody
think-
say Kaddish,
I think-
even though they don't have a need to say Kaddish.
Why would you say Kaddish without a
Well,
need?
in this example of Pam, the men. So she asked Graham, who may have had no reason on that morning because he didn't have a yahrzeit, and it wasn't a warning.
Right, so hold on, there's a couple of things. So to go back to your question, I think once upon a time, well, we know women did a lot less than they do now. Just
to the grounds.
But
if there's a funeral, they didn't.
But forget even about that. Women just weren't as included, educated, any of these things. So yes, it has become much more of a norm in recent years. The chief rabbi put out a booklet, guidelines, I don't remember exactly what it was, which when it came out is when we did our Kaddish.
Yeah.
It was when the base medrash was in the other room,
Yeah.
and we did a Kaddish learning awareness thing for the women. I think that's when we first started our women's breakouts. Gosh, they've developed since then. And one of the guidelines was that the women could say it out loud, but not be the only one saying it. So there should be a man saying it as well, so that it's not the woman leading that part of the service.
But it is quite a recent.
It is quite a recent thing, yes.
The man doesn't have to himself be required to say Kaddish that particular time. He's saying it just for the sake of the woman.
I don't know the answer to that. I haven't looked into it, honestly. I'm not exactly sure, but it doesn't have to be a man saying it for himself or for that particular person. So it could be, this man could be saying Kaddish anyway for his parent, and Pam comes along, sorry, use you as an example, and wants to say it for her mom, and they could be saying for different people, as long as there is someone a man saying it.
But like in this case with Graham saying it, that's.
So
I-
I'm going to pass our Bible number, because I think he prefers not to say Kaddish, doesn't he? Because his parents are alive. But Graham is somebody that does say Kaddish, or I could have asked Jeff Sullivan, because, or Howard, because they're. But the other thing I was just meant to say is that, in this community, and probably in other communities as well, sometimes people pass away and haven't necessarily got anybody else to say Kaddish for them. So Rabbi Wallenberg asks often Julia and Jeff, possibly Graham, Howard, if they would say Kaddish for the 11 months, and they do their best to do that.
So something else you asked about saying Kaddish if there's no need. So there are people, usually it's not someone whose parents are still alive, who will, so like you can pay someone to say Kaddish for the year. There are like people in a yeshiva in Israel who will say Kaddish, and they will have that person in mind for the year. Also, sometimes people will say Kaddish if they have a teacher, a Rebbe that they're really, really close to. They will say Kaddish for that, for them. So it might not be a blood relative, but they will feel very connected and say Kaddish for someone like that.
If
that
you're
makes
not
sense.
in the 11 months, saying Kaddish every day, if it's just saying Kaddish on a yard site, if for whatever reason you can't say on that day, could it be said on the next day, say, or the day before?
Out of my pay grade. I don't know the answer to that one, sorry.
Just wondered.
You know?
So it's on the Shabbos after, isn't it? People come to shul.
I think it's the Shabbos
Like,
before.
Like, that's that week, isn't it? So
If
if
you
you go
can-
to shul, if it's there.
If you can, you meant to try and go to maybe the other day. And then
I think there are people.
Can we say outside for relatives further distance than your parents? Or-
You can.
I mean, for example, it is my great grandfather's yard site tomorrow.
Right, push it on, right?
And if I were a man, would I be saying it for a great grandparent?
You could, so I think, and it's just my personal thoughts, I think people often don't because they will have grandparents, parents, great grandparents
Yeah.
maybe. So if you're gonna do all the way that far back, it would end up being quite a lot of
Yeah.
people. If you don't have that and you choose to, I don't think there's a problem with
At
it.
least would like to handle it.
Yeah, but you don't say Kaddish if you like the Kaddish.
You only say Kaddish if
Yes, so you are not not unless you're on tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. Well,
Me?
Yes,
8 o'clock,
that's what I'm saying. If you wanted to say Kaddish, you'd have to come to shul. The substitution
8
of that.
o'clock no longer features in my day. Not 8 o'clock AM, 8 o'clock PM, fine.
So,
8 AM doesn't fit.
oh, I could do that. Did I ever tell you the quick story? Then let's move on. There was somebody in Cardiff who always used to tell me off for going to bed too late. And one time I went to bed early. Well, it was 11 something. And we had a digital like radio clock at the time. And I'm looking and there's 2 dots next to the time. I couldn't figure out what the 2 dots were. One was the alarm, and what's the other one? It was PM. I had no idea. I'd never seen it before. I told him I got really confused, never doing that again.
Going to bed early.
Going to bed before midnight, obviously. All right, shall we carry on? Pam, would you like to read number 3?
We are. In the front of the sanctuary is a cabinet called the Aron Kodesh, Holy Ark, which contains the Torah scrolls, the most sacred objects in Judaism. Handwritten in Hebrew letters on parchment, each scroll contains the 5 books of Moses. The scrolls are stored in the Ark, and are removed only to be read during services or on other special occasions. The exact size and look of arcs vary greatly, however. However, most of them have doors as well as an ornate curtain, parachutes, which are opened at key points during the prayer.
So the Aron HaKodesh is the Holy Ark. That's where we keep the Torahs. We don't open it just because, just for the sake of it. What I didn't ever think about, honestly, until I was doing my preparation, was I know it has a curtain, the parashas, but I never thought that all arcs I've ever seen, and evidently it's a thing, has two coverings, some sort of door or cabinet kind of thing, and not just for security though. It's the word it used here was for modesty for the Torahs, and I never thought about it from that aspect. The Torahs themselves,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, but it also the ark has doors of some sort and a curtain, and I never thought about it.
But here it said most of them have doors as well as a parachute.
Right, so
Not all of them.
the when I was reading further in my thing, it seems like all of them do. Why does it have two coverings? The first mention of the concept of curtain is found in the Talmud. The curtain is called the paroches. It's from the time of the Mishkan, when they had the temporary temple when they were traveling through the desert, and they had a curtain between the Holy of Holies and the Holy. Kodesh and Kodesh. So it sounds more normal in Hebrew.
It's also important, isn't it, that to be aware that there's quite often there's an alarm in the ark to keep things safe and secure. Because sacred Torah are very, very valuable.
Very, very,
So-
very, very.
Without an alarm in it.
The insurance.
A Sefer Torah, and I know things have gone up a lot in the past year. 30,000 is the last average I've got. And it takes a year to write if someone's dedicated to the Sefer Torah. It takes about a year to write. Because
Sewn together and checked.
they have to write it in order, and they have to make sure if it's missing a word, you can't just like squeeze it in. It has to be written at a certain
Talks about how sacred Torah is written. So it's
probably.
absolutely- Oh, did we not?
There's something here, something here.
Rabbi Pink did.
Yes.
Actually, he was here yesterday.
Oh.
Yesterday, checking the Sefer Torah. Yes. So no, it's very different. So writing one is approximately £30,000. Fixing one is not usually as much, although if you have to fix the whole thing, I mean, imagine going through, they're big, it's a lot of words. I don't know the exact words. They're handwritten, you have to check every single one and go through. Often it's not worth doing the work. Although this small Sefer Torah we've been using does have some mistakes in it. You can have a certain amount or certain kind of whatever mistakes before you need to say, that's it, it's not usable. He said it did need, but because of the size, it's worth fixing that one because it's very rare. It's that, I don't know, don't ask me, Sally might know.
I don't know. They're much easier to lift because the wood is very heavy. I suggested that maybe they could have different supports. It's quite, I think they're wood.
Yeah,
But maybe they could be not wood, but maybe they could be aluminium or something, but evidently they're too heavy. The scroll itself would be too heavy.
there's a lot, it needs a proper support.
But also needs a koa,
Yeah.
granddaughter, which are not koa, that's his grandma, it's koa.
But
They used the
you,
small one at the beginning of the year too, otherwise they
Yeah.
have the heavy one to be unbalanced.
Could you have two people like it? Some balance.
don't know, I've never seen
Well,
that,
I've never seen it. I've never seen
don't know.
a reasonable.
You have to make sure, and then when it's heavy at the end, you have to make sure you've got left-handed person that's strong.
So this is an interesting fact I just learned. When you're having aliyahs for the mitzvah, two brothers can't do hubba and I forget what it's called.
Galila.
No, can't have brothers. Something to do with favoritism. I don't
Well,
really
so
understand.
more than that, who was I discussing this with a couple of weeks ago? So you're not supposed to call up two family members in a row. Were we having this discussion? Did you ask me? You're not supposed to call up two family members in a row. If at all
Do you mean
avoidable.
blood relatives as opposed to in-laws?
Yes, usually, yes.
I'm just thinking.
Because it's not an absolute cannot, but it's a better not to. And the reason is because then, yes, they might be seen as favoritism for a particular family. And then there's a chance that you might call an eye on her on the family, because people might look and go, oh, they're getting all the thing, and you know, why them? So it's basically avoided to call up two people in a row in same family, or to give them both honors, that kind of thing. Yes.
So you can do cousins,
Yeah,
you can do grandchildren and a grandpa.
I think so.
Oh, yeah.
Just very interesting. So when you've got all your boys and it's Gavin's turn,
Grandchildren.
So you try not to do in a row. So like
could have
you might
somebody
have
between.
brothers, yeah. I don't know the
You
exact. Which bar is one?
don't, so there's 9 men.
Good luck.
Sometimes it's
So when we, well, Ellie and Bear, we didn't have so many bar mitzvah brothers, but when we did it, we said we're going to limit it to grandparents and bar mitzvah boy. Because you don't have to call, it's nice, but you don't have to call up everyone. And then also we go to shul for all the minyanim, so you can call somebody else up for mincha, and you can, you know, he's got his birthday on Thursday, mental, so you know, you've got different opportunities.
And also on the day, there might be a number of your sites.
Yeah.
We will have. Yeah, because
So my husband doesn't like calling, so you can fit in extra aliyahs if they're, because someone who has a yard site coming up that week is considered a chiyuv, someone who is supposed to be called up to their Torah. But he doesn't like, if necessary, he doesn't like calling up extra people for the sake of it. So if it's, you know, second cousin once removed, family member, and you've got a number of yard sites, like, no, forget it, they don't need to get called up. You know, the yard sites are more important. We can do one extra for the father, uncle, you know, grandfather, but not, you know, the whole family. Which is why we limited it to who would get called up, because you don't have to. It's more important that yard sites get called up.
When a baby's named,
Yes,
you call it for a bris. It doesn't matter because there's a service anyway. Oh, but if it's the first thing, then you have to think about the call up, don't you?
usually the family with a bris doesn't necessarily get
Call up.
a
if it's
call up.
girl,
They
you
don't
need
say
to tell them.
Tachman though, I think.
Oh, it's just a one-off, it's for a little girl. It's
Yeah.
usually the daddy will come and not anybody else. Maybe.
Yeah, you might have the rest of the family members, but it's not,
Not necessarily, there's no.
you don't call up the whole family. Shall we carry on?
Yeah.
Brenda, would you like to read number 4?
In many synagogues, there is no Torah of light near Talmud, situated above the ark. The flame or light bulb is a symbol of the Western lamp, which continually shone in the holy temple in Jerusalem.
So the Ner Tamid, eternal light, hangs over usually in front of the Aron Kodesh. Some shuls don't have a custom of not having one. It used to be evidently an actual flame, which I never thought about, but makes sense, before they had any other. No, I'm saying actual fire.
Yes.
I don't think they had actual fire here. No.
I remember going to see that.
Oh, wow.
Health and
Um,
safety, yeah.
But now you can do, it's,
Because there was a problem when it blew out and then. Know what we're gonna do.
but now we have just regular lights.
Well, I should probably want some info question and everyone. Hanukkah, but
Yeah.
when it lasted very low, is that the oil for that light? Or was that something else?
No, it was different. So the
The
The menorah and the Nair Tamid were not the same, were
No,
they?
no, I mean,
No.
the oil that lasted, was that for the new tummy?
That was for the menorah.
No, that was for the menorah, two different lights. They had a, yes, they had a menorah that was a 7-branched menorah, not like what we have
Yeah.
today. We have 8 for the 8 days that it lasted. They had anyway a 7-branched menorah that was lit every day by the by, was it the Kohen Gadol or just a Kohen who was on shift? I don't remember. I don't remember. It was very ornate. It was the menorah, as my husband said in Shul on Shabbos, was one of the things that Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu in a flame how to design it, because it was so intricate. And it was made from one solid piece of gold. How I got a piece of gold that size, I don't know. But anyway, so no, that was not. I think the flame that it's referring to was oh no, wrong. It refers to the eternal flame was the menorah, yes, burning the temple, but it wasn't there. It wasn't a Ner Tamid in the sense of what we have now. They had a menorah that was a 7-branched candelabra. So interestingly, I just heard something contrary to what I had always learned. I thought the menorah burnt. Hold on, was it lit at night? Yes, through the night. And then in the morning, the Kohanim would clean it and set it up and get it ready. But someone just recently said that it burned for basically 23 hours, and then they would clean it and light it and start do it. It didn't have a time that it went out.
I was reading I always read the commentaries during the Torah. And it said, it said in the commentary that the Kohen cleaned it in the morning.
That's what I
I'm
thought.
pretty sure it actually said in the morning.
That's what I thought. But it seemed from this other, and I don't remember where I heard it, but it was someone who would know a lot more than me. Said that it basically burned the whole time, which makes sense according to the Ner Tamid being the eternal flame referring to the menorah. I thought the Ner Tamid was referring to the flame on the Mizbeach, the altar that was in the Beis Hamikdash, because that was also
God's presence.
so hold on, what did you say?
I thought the two, the menorah and the Ner Tamid were different.
I did too. It says here that Kol Bo, which is a work published in the late 15th century, says that the reason for the light is to give honor to the divine presence that rests wherever quorum of Jews gather to pray. So that's what, yes, that is one of the reasons for the Ner Tamid. So says whoever that is. I never heard of him. An anonymous work.
So this menorah that lasted 8 days, whatever, why do we not have something like that anyway?
Because we don't have the temple anymore.
Okay.
So that was one of the items that was in the temple. We had the Mizbeach and the other, there were 2 different ones. I don't remember the difference, and my kids would know. And the menorah and the ark that was in the Beis Hamikdash. And so there were different parts of things. So it seems to be saying that the Ner Tamid refers to the light of the menorah.
Okay.
I thought it always referred to the Mizbeach that had the flame on it. But obviously not.
And is this why we shouldn't have a menorah at home?
What do you mean?
A lot of very from people.
You mean-
say that you should, and there are should only be in the shul. I'm not talking about from here, but actually 7 branches.
A 7 branch menorah. So we don't have a 7 branch menorah because we don't, in a sense, we don't have a reason for it. The 7 branch menorah was what they lit in the Beis Hamikdash that we were told to light, had a completely different significance than the Chanukiah we light today, which is to remember those lights that stayed lit for 8 nights. Although a lot of people have a custom of having a similar shaped Chanukiah to the menorah that was in the Beis Hamikdash. We do it, the one that we have is the Rambam's design of the menorah that was in the Beis Hamikdash. But I didn't know that people specifically didn't have, but I don't see a purpose for having one. There's no purpose for having a 7 branched menorah in our homes.
One outside the Knesset, it's a bit branch.
On the
Possibly.
building, on top of the building, yeah.
It's
It's
probably,
not a comic,
Yeah, it's a branch.
so it might be as a representation.
No, that's 8. The one that's outside.
I don't know, I never looked.
I just wanted to go now.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So that one was done by around the corner from there is, I forgot what it's called, but a place that teaches all about what happened during the times of the Beis Hamikdash. So that's there as what they believe to be a replica of the menorah that stood in the Beis Hamikdash as an educational tool. Not just, as you're saying, to have one
Yeah.
for the sake of it, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, shall we carry on? We've got loads more to do.
Traditionally placed in the centre of the sanctuary and facing towards the front of the room is the bima platform. Table from which the Torah is read. It is often, but by no means always, covered by a cloth and placed on the raised stage.
So the bima is in the middle where we read the Torah from, often is slightly slanted, so it's easier to read the Torah from. Usually it's covered with a cloth, and it's usually switched to white for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Interestingly, I know it says both in my notes and here that it's often but not always covered in a cloth. And yet I thought it always was, because if you take out a Sefer Torah to read, if you don't have a bima just on a regular table, they will put down a tallis usually, so that it's respectful for the Sefer Torah. So I thought there was always a cloth, but that's
I also
How little
thought
I
it had
know.
to be at an angle though. That's something. that-
so it's not essential. I think it's just for the ease of
I know with
reading.
Sephardi shawls, they're upright.
Right, so that's a completely, their Sefer Torah, talking about holding them, I don't know how they do that. Their Sefer Torah are metal cases essentially that they open up and read from upright. No idea how they do that, or how they turn.
First read that, the case, I thought that's what they were talking about, the doors.
No, we're talking about the actual ark itself that has doors on it. But so I don't know if Sephardi shawls have a slanted, because that would surely tilt
don't think
it
so.
forward.
I've been
Probably
only
wouldn't be
to
very
one,
safe.
I've been to one wedding in a Yemenite shawl, and they had the
Big awning.
cases, but they just stood up. I think there were a couple of holes in the
the
table
bimmer, that
where
makes sense.
the time went to
Stood.
keep them upright. I wouldn't swear to that, but I think
Interesting.
I think I could see. I mean, we were up high in the
Up high.
gallery, and it was a bit difficult to see what they were doing downstairs.
But yeah, so it's not essential, because you can read a Sefer Torah from a table. But it just makes it easier to read.
The shulchan, then, shulchan's a table.
A shulchan is a table. It's a Hebrew word for a table. This is a shulchan. So a bima is more, well, here it uses the word platform.
They used to be raised, it's raised up. So you would step up to it, but.
Right, so it doesn't have to be, and nowadays it's often not, because especially shows that you have more, no, but especially shows you have more, like ours, more multifunctional rooms. So obviously if you had a raised platform in the middle, it would be slightly more challenging. But the idea of it being raised is, as we discussed, hopefully we'll get to, when someone's called up to the turret, it's called an aliyah. Aliyah is literally to go up, so they would have a step up. They literally have an aliyah to the turret. They step up to the turret.
When, in the beginning, we always, learning always took place in
Up
front
the
of the
top.
ark, yeah.
Yes, I
Always.
remember that. Maybe
But
I've forgotten.
interestingly, it's not supposed to be up
No,
all
because
the
it
way
should
at
have
the
been
front
in
of the
the-
ark.
should have been-
It's supposed to
But
be
the
in
sheep have
the
like
middle.
time, so it's-
It's supposed to be in the middle, and actually many shows specifically do not have it in the front, because the idea of all of it taking place at the front
Yeah.
is taken from the church, it's taken from the Christian churches. So we
But they
specifically
do it.
don't have it.
They really are.
Yes,
I think
but-
they probably ran out of money, they ran out of money for a lot of things.
But there are some things that they might have taken from us, but because it became so
Common,
common for them, that we then took a step back and went, nope, we're gonna do something different.
When do we set up the blue one? And then is that just your idea?
So we used to have it up, we used to have it up quite regularly.
Happened to me. Can I put the blue thing up? I was like, oh, I don't know, it's right, it's the blue one.
That we had that when we had the merger.
Karen, if you want.
But Boundary Road. And everything was pumped up, you know?
Big one, big
It
one.
must be ours.
Yeah, so, you can ask them. So
This, which unmanned person counts, you know.
So the problem, the reason why we don't have it up on a regular basis now, because we used to keep it up and just leave it up,
But now-
is the whole Jewish care, and it takes something like 3 hours to set it up.
No, it's yours.
I'm caused enough trouble.
Oh, I know all about that, don't worry. Okay, any questions about the bimmer? Nope, shall we carry on?
The other. The prayers are led from the front of the room. There's generally a lectern called an almond pillar, which on which the leader, who also faces front, can place his prayer book. The curtain of the ark, as well as the cloths covering the bimmer and the almond, can be any colour. However, during high holy days, white coverings are generally used, reflecting sanctity, purity, and forgiveness, all things of the season.
So if you look in the base medrash, the person who davens on a regular basis doesn't usually daven from the bimah in the middle, they daven from a lectern at the front. In a big show, usually, they don't tend to daven. Sometimes they do have an amud at the front, but usually, I think it's more practical so everyone can hear, they will daven from the bimah. But
When it says prayers are led from the front of the room, and the leader faces the front, does that mean that the front of the room means that it's sort of back to the audience?
yes, he'll daven the same way as everybody else. He's leading them in prayer as opposed to speaking to
Yeah,
them.
just when it talks about the front of the room, we haven't thought about that as being front.
But it is. In a show, you have the arm kodesh at the front.
The bimmer. I know that, but we already ever.
It's the front. That is the front. So which makes me really confused every time, whenever my husband says, so where are we setting up? We're putting this in the front. Because he sits with his back, so this is where everyone else faces. You know, which side do you mean the front? By the kitchen. I go, no, that's the back of the hall. That's the back.
Sorry, I'm confused. So in the show, we've got what I would call do, I guess it's more just like a stage bit, because they don't read from there, they read from in front, but you just say.
Should yeah. Everybody stand up.
It's very important. Into the base of it. Where was it came from? I'm gonna get it. Yeah. Yeah, maybe I should go. Right.
2 hours.
If anybody asks what happens, why the recording went quiet, I came back and I was looks. They're not gonna know what happens. Should have brought the laptop with me. Completely forgot. No, no one's there, but yeah, I think if someone was there, I would have gone, oh, we'll take you in, but no one's there, it's just recording, so yeah. They're going to wonder where we went. We went on a field trip to the base measures to show everybody what we're talking about. Now they know. Okay, so does that make sense now? We have the bimmer, we have the Ahmad, where you're down in front.
Not used during the shul, like a Shabbos.
On a regular Shabbos morning, no, not usually. In some shuls you do have an Ahmad at the front. But not specifically, no. Okay, oh, and we talked about the next one. Would somebody like to read? Maddie?
So that's 7 object of pizza. In Jewish tradition, man and woman sit separated during prayers. In many older synagogues, sitting for women is in the gallery of the full sanctuary. It is more common, however, for men and women to both be seated on the same level with the pizza partition between them.
So mechitza is a petition between the men and women. The men and women daven separately. Traditionally, it was in galleries, and as I don't want to say learned, because I think I knew it somewhere in the back of my brain, but as I was, my memory was triggered, it's taken from the idea of in the Beis Hamikdash, they had basically galleries for the women. So the men would fill the courtyard downstairs, and then they had upper, I think they were called courtyards, not sure, for the women. Now a lot of time it's on the same
I can't get used
level.
to here. I can't get used to being downstairs.
On the same
here.
level.
When Boundary Road was always up, we were upstairs. I just
But it
can't.
must suit you
I
better.
don't like it.
But it suits you better.
I don't like it though. It doesn't feel right. Like
They're not big, I'm not so sure they should not those like.
Yeah,
They've got areas downstairs now, if women can't go. Unless you go to Barnet where they've got shops.
They've got a shop.
Well, no, they've got everything upstairs, they've got their service, everything is up their arse in Israel.
You've got them in apartment blocks as well.
They've got the ground floor and the first floor. The first floor is the shul area. And in order for people to go upstairs.
It just runs all the time, and you walk and get anything.
You find out it'd be quite hard.
Well, no, I think that's other bit, just the same. I mean, at Boundary Road, there was somebody who used to come on Yom Tovim and that who in a wheelchair, and a woman was at the back.
Yeah.
There was a set of pews at the back
Yeah.
that had a
An area.
curtain behind it across, like that curtain in there.
I think it's also.
It just doesn't feel right somehow.
So the idea of the mechitza is so that,
Yes. Because women, there are always some women who have a tendency to yachna a lot, right? And I think if you are on the gallery, I think people kind of like, they focus better. But
no,
you
I
can
don't think
move
it makes a
around.
difference. They used to have in Liverpool, and the way the gallery was set up, unless you were sitting in the front row, you couldn't see or hear a thing. So I think they talked more because they were completely separate. Yeah, completely from the service. Which interestingly, I didn't even realize the whole 4 years we were there, because the Robertson seat was in the front row, third seating. Not the first one, because that was for the previous Robertson who had passed. But I couldn't sit in that seat. I don't know why they didn't give me the second seat in, but I had the third seat in, whatever. Anyway, so I was front row third seat in, which I had to sit in because once or twice I sat in the back because I had a small baby as well. The caretaker used to push the baby so I could be in shul. And I got told off. So I had to sit in the front. And it was only after we moved here and we went back for a bar mitzvah, and I didn't have any requirement to sit anywhere. So I sat in the back row with a few of the ladies that I knew well. And it was halfway through and I was sitting and I went, now I know why you don't like the service. I said, you can't hear anything. You can't see anything. You have no idea what's going on. And they sort of just went.
Road.
I don't know. This is the
I
way.
used to sit 1/3 row back. I could see and hear what was going on.
This built typically, it's first side, it's not so short.
I think it's the church to
Yeah,
start
that's
with,
right.
yeah.
I think the acoustics in there are very specific, and so the room, I think, is strange, and the arrangement of the gallery, I think, is lovely.
But I
There
mean,
we go.
I don't know, I didn't sit down the side, but
Yeah.
where I used to sit was good view, good hearing as
The
well.
beautiful photos, so you did quite well.
But
Because they found like the beautiful posters on the wall, I actually prefer when there is a proper gallery. Because
Right.
even if you don't hear or see anything down there, you can. Yeah. You can
That's right.
Makes it kind of like
Never knew.
more looking from the front rather than at the back.
Don't know.
Downstairs to go and make the finish for them.
So the idea of the mechitza is so that the men and the women separately can daven without being distracted.
That's a whole nother,
Huh?
that's a whole nother lesson.
That's a whole other lesson, but the general idea is so that you're not distracted, and I'm sure most people realize that when you're, well, all you have to do is look at teenagers or younger people, right? When girls are in the presence of boys or boys are in the presence of girls, they act differently. We all naturally do, even if we don't realize or notice. And if you're sitting women amongst women, and although in some communities I would maybe not so much either, because they tend to look, oh, what are they wearing? What are they wearing? It's just as distracting, but no, it doesn't. That's why I said some communities. But women sitting amongst women and men amongst men, they're not likely to be as distracted and are able to focus on their prayers. That is the idea of sitting separately and having a mechitza. Shall we carry on? Who would like to read number 8?
Oh, that's mine, yeah. The daily prayers.
No idea what time it is.
Prayer is referred to as the service of the heart and is one of the many ways that we express love of God. Jewish prayer takes place 3 times a day, morning, afternoon and evening. The afternoon and evening services are often held back to back. On Shabbat, the services are somewhat longer and often better attended. There are 3 daily prayers: Shacharit, the morning prayer; Mincha, the afternoon prayer; and Maariv, the evening prayer. On Shabbat, after Shacharit, the entire weekly Sidra is read, followed by Mafta and Haftarah. Any additional prayer is added on Shabbat called Musaf. Musaf means addition, corresponding to the additional sacrifice in the temple on Shabbat. An additional prayer, Musaf, is also added on Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov.
So did that make sense? So far, so good. So we've got 3 daily prayers: Shacharis, Mincha, and Maariv, morning, afternoon, and evening. Although often people will say Maariv, Shacharis, and Mincha because the Jewish day starts at night. We learn these prayers from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Shacharis, Mincha, Maariv. Abraham got up early and davened. Yitzchak, we know when Rivka was coming back with Eliezer, and Yitzchak was out davening in the fields in the afternoon, and Yaakov davened Maariv. I think it was when he was running from his brother and he stopped. Is that when it was? When he stopped to put the stones around his head and had to sleep, he stopped and davened. I think that's when it was. So we have the different prayers. On Shabbos, we add Musaf, which literally means an addition, and we add it because we had an extra sacrifice in the times of the temple. And we also have Musaf on Rosh Chodesh and Yom Tov. Thank you. I was distracting myself. So Shacharis is a longer service. It's got the praise of Hashem, recognizing Hashem, and Shema, the Amida, which is the silent prayer, and during the week on Monday and every day, Mondays and Thursdays is longer. There's Tachnan, penitential prayers. I've never said them. I've never said them. I don't know. And we read the Torah, as I said, Monday, Thursday, Shabbos morning, and Shabbos afternoon. The idea of that was because I think
market days or something.
Yes.
Monday and Thursday.
it was that I think it was Moshe said we shouldn't go 3 days without reading from the Torah. And so they chose those days because those days were market days and there would be more people together and more of an opportunity of having a minyan, because if people lived in far out villages, they didn't necessarily have a minyan on a regular basis. So if they were coming into the market, there was more of a chance of having a minyan. The afternoon and evening prayers. Afternoon is the Amidah, and the evening is Shema and Amidah. That's the basics of those prayers. You had a question? No? Didn't have a question.
I was thinking that after we got to the service, you can go out shopping then.
Monday and Thursday. If you would like to come at 8 o'clock, no, it's 6:40 on Monday morning, at 6:40 in the morning, and 8 o'clock on a Thursday morning, and go shopping afterwards, you are welcome to do that.
Monday at 8 o'clock on a Thursday, when the service will be a similar length.
Okay, that's a specific 2-hour show. It used to be 6:40 every day.
I realise that.
And some people wanted at 8 o'clock, but they asked all the regulars, and there were some people who came on Mondays and Fridays. Fridays is also 6:40. Some people who came on Mondays, basically they would
They won't be
have
able to get to
a
work in time.
they would have a better minion at 8 o'clock Tuesday to Thursday
Oh,
and a better
okay.
minion at 6:40 Mondays and Fridays.
Okay.
So that's what they've done.
I
It's
understand.
practical, very
On a
practical.
Monday and a Thursday. We can say.
Yes, but it's not to do with the service, it's to do with the, yes.
What other schools have them like that, different
Some
times?
have two, an early one and then an 8.
They've got enough people.
Yeah, if you have
But
enough people, you'll have.
if you live not in South Woodford, then it takes you forever to get here in the morning, you can come for the 8 o'clock.
Or you can go to
Chigwell?
a show like Ellie went to. Turin, or I don't remember, he told me sometime in the past couple of weeks, where they have a rolling minion. Basically, they start and then half an hour later, there's another
Yeah.
minion, and then half an hour later, basically you can catch a minion.
On every corner.
Is-
I remember.
Yeah, there's a place in Stamford Hill that has that also. They advertise their damning times and it's like every half an hour. It's like every half an hour, shaka, 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 shaka's men come in, come in, come in, come out. So it just depends which one you want to catch. So we should pray with a lot of concentration, with kavana. Prayers are interestingly, hold on, there was something I wanted to. Sure, no, not this, not this, not this. Where was it? Let's talk about Kiddush.
Yeah.
Huh?
The next, the third, text 9 is about Kiddush. When I'm surprised that they wouldn't have put all the things about what happens during a service or when Kiddush lasts.
Well, this is more the, oh, there was something that was interesting.
Then you have to read.
I must try and remember to read before I was because there's so much to read afterwards. That
I can't remember what the interesting thing was, sorry. Oh, this was, and then one of the interesting things. Nusach. So I know we discussed it different times when we were talking about the Hebrew reading. There are different variations to the text. When you read the Hebrew text, there are sometimes slightly different words or slightly different. Anyone who does the Hebrew reading with me, sometimes I'll read the wrong thing. It's not because I'm reading, it's because I'm doing it from memory, because we have a different nusach. There are 3 overall main nusach. Nusach is the text. There's slight different variations of the words.
Not of the Sefer Torah, though, of the prayer book.
So the Sefer Torah is usually not different, except if you look at the vowels, sometimes they will
No,
be
I mean,
slightly
you're
different.
talking about the prayers, not
The prayers,
not
yes,
the
it will be
prayer.
the prayers. But although it refers to a lot of things, because sometimes you'll have it even in tefillin or in a mezuzah. So it will be the actual words, the wording, and sometimes the vowels, the way the words are read. And you have Nusach Ashkenaz, which is a custom of Jews from Germany and Eastern Europe. Nusach Sfard, the custom of Spanish and Oriental Jews. Nusach Arizal, a text used by Hasidim following the Kabbalistic text of Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who is known as the Arizal. And those are 3 main ones. There are other nusachs, I don't know how to say that plurally.
Especially seem to be more long, isn't it? It's almost kind of more punished. We'll have to spend more time.
I don't know. Not necessarily. So a lot of it was where different customs of different places and different spaces. So as I mentioned, the structure of the prayer was put in place later on, and some of it was, a lot of customs were put in place depending where they were. So it was the rabbis of this group or the rabbis of this group were, it was developed, and that's where the differences came. So I don't know why some are longer, some are shorter. Maybe they thought they could handle it. Maybe they thought they needed it. I don't know. But there's different, I know it took me a long time because we daven Nusach Arizal, and Shabbos morning it ends at Aleinu. We don't have a Alam, we don't have Anim Smiris, the Shir Shal Yom is done much earlier. Everything is done earlier on, and I remember it took me a long time to get used to the extra 15 minutes at the end of davening. Yeah, and then one time we went to a Chabad shul when we were on holiday in Bournemouth. And I was like, yes, we can have Kiddush right after Aleinu. What I didn't realize was the rabbi spoke after Aleinu, and he didn't just speak, he spoke, and he spoke, and he spoke. I was like, gosh, I'd rather have. So yeah, that was a disappointment. So yes, so Shabbos morning we have slightly longer service, because we have the extra musaf, and usually also there's a lot more, you do have more people, so there's a lot more singing, and I want to say interactive, as opposed
Especially
to,
when you have kids club and stuff like that, you actually have kids Kiddush as well. and
Yeah.
separate.
whereas during the week they kind of just
We need to
get on with it.
Got to get to work.
Even those that aren't necessarily going to work, because you have in some places like a retired minion or whatever, they don't necessarily take their time davening, but yes, they'll probably chat afterwards.
Take their time of evening.
Okay, shall we carry on?
Ritual Kiddush, not to be confused with Kaddish. Kiddush refers to the brief prayer said over wine, as well as the subsequent reception itself. Once you hear Kiddush, sip some wine and feel free to tuck in, you deserve it. I have a funny story about this Kiddush Kaddish similarity. When I converted, I made a Kiddush at Boundary Road on the Shabbos, and I invited one of my colleagues and his wife and their 2 children to come. Now, both my colleague and his wife, they were both brought up as Jewish. They were secular by that time, but they had been brought up with a Jewish education, so they knew quite a bit. And as it happens, the children went down with chicken pox in the morning, on the Friday or the Saturday morning, I don't know which. And so they didn't come, but only the father came, who was actually my colleague. And he turned up late. And we'd all gone into the hall for the Kiddush. And the rabbi, for some reason, was walking across the front of inside the building, but across the front. And Howard came in and he said, "Oh, excuse me, can you tell me where do I go for Iris's Kaddish?"
Oh.
And Rabbi Selaznik said, "Not yet." But he took him round anyway. I've never let Howard live that down.
So Kiddush translates as sanctification. We make Kiddush Friday night, right? Often we talk about Kiddush as here it is, the reception after the service, which is essentially what it is, right? But Kiddush itself is when you take a cup of wine or grape juice and you sanctify Shabbos, Friday night and Shabbos day. And we're supposed to do it twice, Friday night and Shabbos day. So we do it after the service in shul. We make Kiddush so that we can eat, because that's what the mitzvah to do. And you have lots of things referred to as Kiddush, right? So people will call the whole reception thing a Kiddush. Often you'll hear people who have a stone setting, they'll say, oh, they have a Kiddush afterwards. It's not actually a Kiddush. I know people refer to it, but it's not actually a Kiddush. Because I'm not saying anybody's wrong, but it's Kiddush is when you take a cup of wine and you make Kiddush. So Kiddush and shul kind of makes sense because you make Kiddush and then you eat all the food afterwards. But the other things people refer to, sometimes you'll have a Kiddush when a baby girl is named, so they'll make a Kiddush in her honor. Now we have lots of people make a Kiddush for a birthday or an anniversary or something. So the whole thing is usually referred to as a kiddush, even though technically kiddush is when you hold a cup of wine and you make kiddush on it, whether it's the nighttime kiddush or the daytime kiddush.
We call it kiddush, but it's spelled kiddush. But
Basically,
everyone calls it
yes,
kiddush.
everyone calls it. And you, Maddie, don't be embarrassed. Everybody calls a stone setting kiddush a kiddush, even though it's not. Yeah, I've heard lots of
I
people.
just heard it called the stones.
Let's get mixed up.
Go back way, way back
So different things, we have the kiddush wine, obviously we make kiddush on wine or grape juice. You have the cup that you use for kiddush cup, it's often silver, or if it's not, sometimes you've got ceramic or glass or all kind of ornate, beautiful cups. You have a different kiddush on the Yom Tovim, they're all different, slightly different kiddushes. You have kiddush levana, kiddush being sanctification, not where you eat anything. Levana is the moon, so once a month we say a special prayer at night, sanctification of the moon. Kiddush HaChodesh, yes, when we learned about this before, when we bless the new month, the new incoming month that week, we do that in Shul on a Shabbos morning. Kiddush Hashem. Anyone know what Kiddush Hashem is?
Sanctification of the name, it's sort of like dying for the sake of.
So it can be,
Yeah.
but not necessarily. Kiddush Hashem, sanctification of the name, which means it refers to Hashem, is when you do something that will give Hashem a good name, basically. So Kiddush Hashem, if you see, I don't know, husband kids behaving nicely on a bus, getting up to let somebody sit down because they're taking up all the seats. Somebody will say, wow, that was a beautiful Kiddush Hashem. That, you know, they'll say, wow, those Jewish kids really know how to behave nicely. It's a good deed, but not necessarily. It's where somebody will turn and look, that's a beautiful way to behave. You know, it's Jewish people. Kind of. It's usually referred to as, you know, a good behavior, but that shows a positive. I don't know how to put it in English.
Was about to get blown down. And I said to him, I think she shouldn't be out. And he said, we'll walk with her to wherever she's going. I have never thought of that as that expression, but thank you for doing that.
Yes.
I was very, very touched that he thought to help the lady who was so unsteady on her feet. We got her all
So
the way
windy
to
today.
Lincolnshire.
It was so windy today.
It was, and she really.
But
did
only
have to
here.
Hold on to the wall
So you got her all the way to
in George Lane.
And
She was
she was
walking
up
Cleveland Road.
into the solicitor.
And she was walking, she was at the solicitor. And we had gone out for a walk because our phones got on. And he said, I think we should walk. And he said to her, you must get a cab home. You cannot walk home on your own.
You know, it was only windy, like in this area. We
Oh,
went
so
to
windy.
Hampstead Garden
I
suburb
saw-
and there was no
I
wind.
saw very close
Nothing.
together, it said it would be windy everywhere.
Well, it wasn't in Hampstead Garden suburb. Maybe it was just Hampstead Garden suburb, I don't know.
But there's no wine involved in that lot.
Not specifically, not specifically. Although interestingly, I had a discussion with Yisraelik after Purim. And the opposite of a Kiddush Hashem is a Chilul Hashem, that you have a bad name. You bring a bad name to the Jewish people, essentially.
So
So-
in a way, it's kind of like a mitzvah, isn't it?
It is essentially. So Yisraelik was telling me that in Northwest, because he was there over most of Purim, people get crazy drunk, and he was describing some of their behavior. And he was extremely, he said it was a real Chilul Hashem, like it was really, and he said, but there was loads of police around. He said they were basically there protecting us. He said they just ignored everything. They didn't pay attention to anyone. He said if somebody was like making trouble, then they would, but otherwise they didn't pay attention. People were drinking and, you know, whatever, being crazy. And And it was interesting because Violet and I, my cleaner, were having this discussion with him. It was the three of us in the kitchen. And I said, but the police, he's like, he couldn't understand why the police and the bus drivers, he said, were all just not bothered by all these rowdy people. Yeah, and I said, I said, you have to understand that they're obviously understand that it's one day a year.
Coming out.
It's one day. I said, it's not like people who go to a pub every Saturday night and they drink just for the sake of it. This is a celebration. It's a Purim celebration. He said they got on a bus and the non-Jewish driver was like, oh, have a happy festival. You know, like he was getting into the Purim spirit, right? He was driving around Northwest. So I was trying to explain to Sonic that you can be happy, you can be, yes, a bit tipsy and a bit drunk and throwing up, which might not be nice or pleasant, but they recognize that you're celebrating your festival, you're happy, and you're not being destructive. And it's, you know, and right, and because he's never seen that, he couldn't understand why they were so happy to see everybody drunk. I'm like, I'm not sure they were happy to see them drunk, but they yeah, and he couldn't understand that. I said, I don't think it was a chilul Hashem, a negative thing. It might not have been a positive thing, but it seemed to be, from what he was describing, that they were all happy to see everyone happy and carefree, and which we don't often.
Well, even though they have spirit.
Lots of spirit by the sound of it, with lots of spirits.
On Sunday morning, they had on BBC One, they have a faith programme and different faiths do this thing. And Judge Robert Rinder was on last Sunday, not this Sunday, but talking about Purim. And they immediately gave him a glass of whiskey. And had common question there. And he explained that Purim, people get very merry and they get excited, and that's what he's done.
And I think one of the mitzvahs of Purim is actually to get married over the time, isn't it?
So
They were allowed to.
Simplest Torah people do, although there's no mitzvah to on Simplest Torah. There's no specific mitzvah to on Simplest Torah. Whereas Purim, there is a mitzvah to.
Yeah. You used to have a lot of spirit.
Very drunk. We had a lot of beer out, and do you know that I put almost all of it away this Purim?
Yes, we're not beer drinkers. No.
Oh, you know what? I put out lots of other things, and most of the time it doesn't go.
Wine would work, whiskey would work.
Well, then, Pam, there's still loads of beer. Okay, shall we carry on? Well, I think we're back to you.
So the object is the Sefer Torah. The Sefer Torah scroll of law is placed in the Aron HaKodesh, which is dressed with a mantle, a coat. Oh, I see, mantle. That's the name of it.
Yeah.
A coat, a choshen, a breastplate, a yad, the pointer, which the Baal Koreh, the Torah reader, uses to read, and a keter, a crown placed on the Tzai Chaim, wooden poles around which the parchment is wound. When the Torah is to be read, a man is honored with opening the ark, the petach, the sefer, the sefer Torah is removed from the ark and handed to the, we've got some good words today, Shliach Tzibur, aka the Chazan, who then carries it to the bima from where it is read. It is customary to stand when the ark is open, to kiss the sefer Torah during its procession. When the Sefer Torah is placed on the bima, it is always flanked by two men out of honor to the Torah.
So there were a lot of words there. So you have the Sefer Torah, which is the Torah scroll, which lives in the Aron Kodesh, which we discussed as the ark at the front. It usually has a let's start the other way. So you have the Sefer Torah, which is the scroll. The scroll lives on both sides on the Atzei Chaim, which is the wooden handles that holds it up, right? And if you've ever watched when they dress the Sefer Torah, they roll up the scroll and they usually put a belt kind of a thing around it, which is called the gartel. which literally just means a sash, it seems. And over the gartel and the wooden posts and the scroll is the mantle, which is the coat of the Sefer Torah. And over that, you know, they have the silver plate, that's the choshen, which is the breastplate, and a long pointy thing, which if you look really carefully, you probably don't notice, is literally a hand pointing like that. It's called the yad. Yad means a hand. It is the pointer which they use to point in the Sefer Torah. The purpose of the yad, because you don't need one, the purpose of it is because we spoke about not to touch the scroll itself, because basically you have greases on your hands or whatever, and the Sefer Torah would get damaged faster. The Baal Koreh is the person who reads from the Torah. Koreh literally meaning to read. Sorry, before that, we have, when you adjust it, we have the keter, is the crown that goes on top of the Sefer Torah.
Is that the same for us would do the bells? The equivalent of a keter.
Yeah, well, that's it is a crown. It would be the same thing. It's just a different design, if you will. It's two parts of the crown, if you will. But they would be considered the same thing. I put two of the same, sorry. So someone takes it out of someone opens the Sefer Torah, right? Anyone ever heard of psicha? That's peticha, the word you were struggling with. Psicha, that's the difference in how you read it. It's the same word, it's just pronouncing a soft or a tough. And the Shliach Tzibur, it's also the name of the Chazan. Shliach Tzibur is the representative of the community. So they will lead the community in prayers, being their sort of representative for all the parts that only the Chazan says. And we read it on the Bima, which we've discussed. And I think those are all the words that we've covered here, I think.
Something I've not seen in the recent past is when I was a kid. I can't remember what day it was, on a Thursday or Friday. So we used to take the paper, and it must have been on the bin, and they would roll it. They just have to roll it to make sure they got to the right center of the Shabbat. And I always found it most fascinating that the way that it would roll, that somebody would stand at that end, and it must be when they had two Sefer Torah, and they had to get one ready for the second reading.
So usually it's when they don't have two Sefer Torah.
All right, okay.
So basically what a lot of shuls will do, if you have enough Sefer Torah, they'll keep different Torahs in different parts. So they'll keep it in book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, 5, 4, whatever, through 5. If you don't have enough Sefer Torah, some shuls, some small shuls just starting out, you have 1 Torah. What happens if you're meant to have 3 Sefer Torah for that davening, right? You read from 3 different parts. They don't take out 3 parts. They read 1 part, they roll it to the next place, they read the next part, they roll it to the next place, and they read the next part.
And then the next Shabbat, they have to roll it back.
To the right parsha. So sometimes you'll have, but if you take out the wrong Sefer Torah, which obviously no Torah is wrong, but if you take out the Sefer Torah that's in the wrong place, you're not supposed to say, oh, shucks, this isn't the one we want, to put it back and take out the next one. You've taken that out. It's the proper thing to do to honor that Sefer Torah is to read that one. So they'll roll it to the right place and read that one. The only reason you would put a Sefer Torah away and take out another one, as far as I know, is if it's puzzle, and then they don't put it away properly. They would put the mantle, the cover on first, and the gartel on the outside, so that you can tell that it's a puzzle Sefer Torah or questionable Sefer Torah. They're not sure yet.
I have to find it fascinating to watch people roll in it.
It is really interesting.
When we went to Australia, as a Jewish family, Dear's father ran a few shuls in Melbourne, and Julian and John helped the rabbi there, roll the Torah to the right place. Yeah, it was a Friday morning.
It has an interesting sound.
Can't say I remember the sound. I remember seeing the motion. Because they
No, I
sort of
used to go
roll,
onto the
roll.
river with my car on a weekday.
right?
Because they would come to do whatever
So-
needed to be done.
If we carry on, because I'm just really conscious that it's getting late and we still have lots to do. Okay, on page 95, text 10, we basically covered all of those, so I'm going to skip those unless anyone has any more questions. And if we carry on to the bottom, text 11, and we talk about the reading of the Sefer Torah, somebody asked a question before, Sally, was it you, about Aliyahs? I don't remember. Maybe it was how many?
Torah has 53 sidrot. Every Shabbat, we read the entire weekly sidra in the synagogue. Since there are only 52 weeks in a year, and also some festivals fall on Shabbat, there are certain Shabbat tops on which we read 2 sidrot. From very early times, the rabbis instituted that the first part of the weekly sidra, i.e. up to Sheni, that's the second call up, should be read on Shabbat afternoon during Mincha, and on Monday and Thursday morning. In this way, there will never be 3 days without hearing some words from the Torah. The weekly sidra is split into 7 sections. The sidra is read by one man called the Baal Koreh, and at each section a person is called up to the Torah. The call up is called an Aliyah. A Kohen priest is always called up to the Torah first, followed by a Levi, a Levite, and then a Jewish male over bar mitzvah, and any Jewish male over bar mitzvah 13 years of age. So you could call up a Levi and a Kohen again. If you haven't.
So generally not, the Kohen is only the first Aliyah, and the
lady
Levi is only the second one.
and most people don't have all
The
of them.
ones afterwards are generally not done, because from what I understand, it's not respectful to the Kohanim and the Leviim.
Also, unless they're doing up to.
Right, then they can get the maftir, because whoever reads the maftir, or whoever's called up for the maftir, reads the haftarah.
After the Torah is read, a person is honored to lift the Sefer Torah, open the Sefer Torah, and show the text to the congregation. This is called Hakba. Another person is honored to close and dress the Torah. This is called Galilah. Interesting.
Why is
Yes,
this,
at the beginning.
Rima, that the first part up to Sheni is read on Monday, Thursday and Shabbat afternoon? Why don't they use a couple more of the Aliyahs on the different days? Why do they read
Do
the
the
same
same
bit
one.
over and over?
They only read the first Aliyah
Yeah, that's what I
and
mean. Why?
split it into 3. I think it's basically a nominal, we're reading the Sedra, so they don't carry on. Otherwise it might make sense to do the first one, then the second one,
Yeah,
Shabbos
yeah.
morning you read 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and
So
or whatever it is.
on Monday you read one, and on Thursday you read another, the next one, and then Shabbos read them all, and Shabbos afternoon read the.
I don't know why that's the way they do it, but they just read the first Aliyah Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos afternoon, and then Shabbos morning, obviously we read,
Not a
the
particular
entire
reason,
thing.
only
Not that I
that's what
know of.
It's customary.
not that I know of. So on the Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos afternoon, it's 3 Aliyahs, Kohen, Levi, and anybody, Yisrael. Shabbos morning, it's Kohen, Levi, and 5 others. I'm thinking Yontif,
So-
I know I did read it.
So-
Yontif, I think is 5.
It's only one of the, but 3 people will read.
Yes, it's broken up into 3 Aliyahs, but it's only the first part.
Is that my thought? Shabbos afternoon was the next week.
Yes, it is. Shabbos afternoon is the next week, because the morning has already passed, if you like.
Okay.
So they're on to the next
Next
Sedra.
Everybody knew that.
No, I didn't
Yes.
realise that.
So Shabbos afternoon is that, so if, let's say it's Bereshis, so Monday you'll read Bereshis. I was gonna say Tuesday you don't read anything.
No.
Thursday you'll read, I mean, you could read it from Chunsh, but Thursday you'll read Bereshis. Shabbos morning you'll read the whole of Bereshis. That afternoon you read the next edge of Parshas Noach.
Oh.
Because you're already starting that, you've read the Shabbos morning Sedra, you're starting on the next one. So if you some people have the custom of saying, well, a few different things. Chabad has a custom of saying Chitas, Chumash, Tehillim, and Tanya every day of the week. There's certain parts you say. The parts of Chumash you say is every day of the week. You would read that the aliyah of that week's Sedra. So starting Sunday, it would start from Yom Rishon of next Shabbos. Not Yom, the aliyah Rishon of next Shabbos. And then what's the next day of the week? Monday. I don't know my days of the week. Monday, you do Sheni of the next Shabbos. Tuesday, you do Shlishi of the next Shabbos. So starting from Shabbos afternoons, basically you're on to the next week already. So but Aliyah is when someone gets called up to the Torah, and we said Aliyah because it means going up, and often it was they would go up, and spiritually you're being called up to the Torah. It's a spiritual going up as well. Hagba is when they lift up the Torah, and Galila is when they dress the Torah with all of those things that we've listed just before.
Why do they show the text to the congregation at the end? Well, I would have thought it would be good to show them the text at the beginning.
I don't know. I don't know.
You can't actually see the words really, can you? At that point. You can
But-
see the columns. that would be
But
read.
they're not meant to pick it up close. They are meant to
Show
pick it up
that's fine,
open.
yeah, but you
So
can't see
no,
where we're sitting, you can't read it.
no,
No.
not that you can say, oh, that's where we're up to.
Right, and if you have a telescope,
I'm just curious.
I don't know.
I'm gonna read today.
I don't know. I think it's more, this is what we've read today. I don't know why. Interestingly, and I only learned this today, one of the things in these things was, are the two words of Sidra and Parsha synonymous? And it seems that they aren't actually synonymous. One of them refers to, hold on, a Parsha is a section in the Torah, and it's an open portion or a closed portion, depending how it's actually written in the Sefer Torah. So if it starts, hold on, depending on how big the space is before each parsha, is if it's open and considered an open portion or a closed portion. So a parsha depends on the spaces in between the words in the Sefer Torah. So a Sedra, which is the portion that we read on Shabbos each week, could have more than one, often does evidently have more than one Parsha, a Parsha being a section. So we often refer to,
lovely like a paragraph.
it seems like it might be more than a paragraph, but it's more like a paragraph than the whole story that we're reading.
No.
So not necessarily, not necessarily.
There's a letter P.
Yes,
P.
it says there's a pay.
Space at the end of the line.
So not necessarily, the where it has a new letter or a new space, that's what we would call a perek. So a section, if you will, and it's numbered, right? So it's,
I don't read the little numbers, I mean.
right, that's,
It's like Shani and.
it's chapter and verse. Oh, that's the columns.
Column.
So if you have the big numbers and the little numbers, that's, as we call it, chapter and verse.
The chapter.
Right, but not necessarily the same as the parsha, the section in the Torah as it's written. Yeah, and I did not know that.
Each person called up read a parsha.
No, they were.
No, evidently not.
You know what you just said just now, that, have we got that bit of text or not?
No,
Okay. But that's.
no. But if you go on to Chabad.org, and it's literally, the article is called "What is the difference between a Sidra and a Parsha" by Baruch Davidson.
But maybe the next time we do something like this, we should have a push in front of us. And then we can see them.
Well, next time we're not doing this, we're
No.
doing something different.
Now.
We're meant to cover the whole thing tonight. So the Sedra is the Sedra is the portion that we're reading this week.
Yes.
right?
I know that.
The parsha is sort of almost like, if we put it in the terms that Iris used, the paragraphs. So it's split into paragraphs, but it might be 3 or 4 paragraphs that makes up the sedja.
The partial with a rabbi, you discussed just that portion, nothing other. That's what the aim of partial is, isn't it?
So we normally refer to a parsha as the sedra. We use them synonymously, but they're not actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so like, I'll give you an example, like, if you run and say, class, quickly class, to say the partial, you started just a specific portion of it.
Possibly, but not necessarily. Possibly, but not necessarily. A lot of partial classes will take one aspect and focus on that, but not necessarily.
Lima,
Um,
I've just found the article, so I could put the link on the group.
yeah, sure. So something else I wanted to discuss with reading of the Torah and calling up, we obviously sometimes you notice either my husband or Julian often will do a bunch of mumbling after somebody is finished, right? They say their brachos and they do a whole bunch of mumblings. Right, that's literally, isn't that what it sounds like, right? So, so what are they doing? They're doing a mishaberach. A mishaberach, I don't know what the English is. So it could be for healing for new mothers, babies, or somebody else, a refuah shlema. It could be for you know, when after he does all his mumblings, is when we go, it's so-and-so's birthday, it's giving them a bracha for, they were called up for a simcha. It could be when sometimes they have somebody will say a bracha if they've been on a dangerous journey or a dangerous thing and they bench gomel, right? Anyone ever heard of bench gomel? So you'll say that afterwards. So there's a mishaberach for different things, for all different, any happy thing or an illness or anything. There's basically a mishaberach for everything. So that is
And the
a yahrzeit, yes, although there are certain times that I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying here. You're not supposed to say Mishaberach, so they say Kel Malei Rachamim, which is similar but different. I don't know the difference. I didn't get that far. I'm not sure. There's certain months, I think, and I'm not sure when, and I'm not sure why. Again, above my pay grade. Huh? That sounds right, but I don't know why that makes sense. I don't know. Not my department. Okay, shall we carry on?
Ritual, matter and Haftorah. In a particular period of Jewish history, the land of Israel was ruled by an oppressive, non-Jewish government. The government did not allow the Jews to read the Torah. Instead of reading the Siddur from the 5 books of Moses, the Jews read every week a similar reading in content from the prophets. After this harsh decree was abolished, the custom remained, and nowadays on Shabbat, after 7 men have been called up to read the Torah, an additional person is called up to read first the Maftir, that's the last few verses of each Sidra, and then the portion from the prophets, which is called the Haftarah. On special days such as Rosh Chodesh, Yom Tov, etc., a special Haftarah is read, connected with the theme of that day.
So that's the maftir and the haftar. Does that make sense? Any questions? Shall we carry on? I'm very, very conscious that it's late. So if anybody wants to, if you want to stop, we can stop. If you want to carry on, we can carry on. It's completely up to you. It is, but yeah. 14 is a big one, which I was thinking we'd sort of, I can try and go quicker, but we have to talk less.
Could we maybe do the rest of it next time?
So I'm just very conscious that we've missed 2 lessons already. And if we do that, we'll sort of be 3 lessons behind. And I don't know when we'll make it up, because I do want to finish it. And I want to do something nice at the end. I don't know what yet. We'll decide together.
Yeah.
A trip to New York. So again, I'm afraid if we do that, it'll take up too much time, because the next lesson will then be cut short and we'll end up playing catch up the whole time.
We could go on a.
The
field trip
other
at the end,
option is-
somewhere a little bit further
a
than.
little further than down the hall. The other option is you can read it and post comments, questions on the group if you want to do that, just putting it out as an option. Or if you want, we can try and see how fast we can get through it. It's up to you. Iris is tired.
I'm sorry, no, I've been really good day.
Okay.
I've nothing to do with it.
So we try number 13 and see how we get on.
Who's in the thing? The rabbi, the synagogue rabbi is a spiritual guide of the congregation. In many communities, the rabbi also delivers a sermon on Shabbat and holiday mornings on other special occasion. The rabbi is in many congregations, the wife of the rabbi takes the quasi-official leadership role, guiding, teaching, and leading. The cousin cantor, whose prayers are led by a member of the congregation. It is considered an honor to lead the congregation in prayer. In many congregations, there is a special designated cantor who leads the prayers on the Shabbos and holidays. The gabbai, often translated as warden, the gabbai or plural, helps keep things organized and running smoothly. During the Torah reading, the gabbai called up people to the bima for the reading aliyahs and distribute other honors. You, that's right, every single Jew is important and we all contribute as a whole, whether you can read Hebrew or not. You are integrally part of the congregation.
Okay, so that's the main people in the shul. You've got the rabbi, the rebbetzin, the chazan, also known as, we've said earlier somewhere, the shliach tzibur, who's the same as the chazan. Usually the same person will be referred to as either the gabbai, who will be a warden, and every person who comes and participates. Now, this is something I thought would be very interesting. The origins of smicha. Someone who is a rabbi will have smicha. Smicha is I don't know what the actual word is, the ordination of a rabbi. It's like a degree. So the original classical conditions for smicha was that the person who did it had to be accompanied by 2 others, so 3 judges, if you will, but only the one actually giving the smicha had to be ordained himself. Both the person giving the smicha and receiving it had to be in the land of Israel, but didn't have to be in presence of each other. It could be done by an oral or written message. The person had, interestingly, a person could be ordained to rule only in a specific area of Jewish law, and they were required to be qualified in all areas, but only it was possible that they were only allowed to judge in certain areas. Hold on, we haven't gotten there yet. And they had different terms of what they were called. Yora, may he decide, he may decide, and Yadin, may he judge, he may judge. I'm not quite sure what one is higher, one is lower, I'm not quite sure. Not only could a person be ordained to rule only a specific area, but also possibly for only a specific time period. There was no limit how many people could be ordained at one time. King David did 30,000 people at once, and originally whoever was ordained would in turn ordain his students. But during the times of Hillel the Elder, the 1st century BCE, as a gesture of respect to the remnants of the house of David, the sages instituted that smicha could be conveyed only with the permission of the leader, the Jewish leader of the generation, the Nasi. So that was the original rules for giving smicha. And it started with Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the first one, who then gave smicha to Yehoshua, who then gave it to the 70 elders, and from there they passed it on to others. Now, interestingly, if you hear rabbis' names from the Talmud, you will hear, so even if we read in the Haggadah, right, you have all different names. The titles that were given, so this is what you were saying, there was Rabbi, Rav, and Rabban, right? Anyone heard of Rabban Gamliel? It's in the Haggadah. The title Rabbi was born by the sages of the land of Israel, who were ordained there in accordance with the custom handed down by the elders. As direct heirs to the Torah of Moshe, they were granted authority to judge. I don't know how to pronounce this word.
Very proud.
Where'd it go? Here.
Penal.
Penal, I don't know what that means.
Legal.
Legal cases, penal cases.
Penal. Yeah.
I've never seen the word before,
Things
sorry.
that come in the code.
Things that can't law.
Can end up having somebody being punished.
Okay,
Penal, a penal code is a code of punishment.
okay,
What is suitable for what,
right.
crime.
So the title rabbi was given to anybody who got smicha in the land of Israel, but there were plenty of rabbis who were in exile. So the Babylonian sages who got ordination outside of Israel went by the title Rav. So kind of like reverend, yes. Huh? Yeah, well, it's all teacher, it's all my master, but because they were outside of Israel and the initial rules of smicha where they had to be in Israel, so they were they got the title of Rav, reverend kind of, and because they were not ordained in Israel, their ability to rule was restricted and did not include cases involving punitive damages. Rabban, this title was reserved for the patriarchate. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't think I've ever heard that word either. I've heard the first part of it, but not the right ending, the same ending. The Nasi, or the president of the rabbinical court, the Av based in, so the Rabban would have been the head of the courts of the time.
Diane.
Kind of like we would call a Dayan now, or a Rav. So in America, a Rav is the equivalent of a Dayan in the UK. And a rabbi is your just regular. Well, hold on. So interestingly, it seemed to be that it was their knowledge and their ability and how much they learned from their teachers. Okay. But then we got to the time period during the Roman rule where they weren't allowed to gather together. They weren't allowed to learn. They weren't allowed to passing on this, rabbi status, the smicha. The Romans thought that it was because then they were allowed to judge themselves. They thought they were trying to create a rebellion amongst the Jewish people, creating their own judicial system and not listen to the Romans. And so they tried to squash it and ban it. So there was a point in time where this wasn't happening. They weren't in Israel, they weren't able to do that, and they didn't have the right circumstances to fulfill all of those rules to give smicha. So it was after the Spanish expulsion in 1492 that they tried again. So there were different rabbis in different periods that sort of managed to give smicha to their students, but very sort of far and few between. There were lots of great rabbis, but they didn't technically officially have the title of rabbi, rav, or rabban. So they passed on the knowledge and the learning, but didn't have that ability to judge and rule things. So it was after the Spanish Inquisition that one of the rabbis basically broke away from the what it's calling here the classic smicha program, and got a few of the great rabbis at the time to make someone a rabbi, and he was actually banned at that point because he broke away from the norm at the time, even though they couldn't do it. And then there was a great argument, and a bunch of rabbis said, actually, we've got to look at a different way because we're not able to do it the way we were doing it. So now you have smicha, rabbis do pass on, they learn lots of different topics, some more hands-on, some less hands-on, and they do get smicha, but generally your sort of average rabbi has limited knowledge of lots of different subjects. You then have a rav. Yeah, you'll then have a rav who will make your basic decisions. You'll then have a dayan who's got more knowledge. Often the higher up a rabbi goes, the more specific their expertise will be. So there will be different dayanim who have different knowledge, whether that's in medicine or electronics or health or ethics, or Rabbi Pink is quite knowledgeable in medical ethics specifically. So you'll have different rabbis as they learn and they grow and they get sort of higher qualified in the rabbinate, they'll often deal with a more specific area. It doesn't mean they don't know everything else, but they have more experience in a specific area. So you have more rabbis nowadays, but your sort of basic rabbi doesn't necessarily have the same level of knowledge that one of the rabbis in the times of the Talmud has.
Like with, you go to the GP and
Yeah.
they know a lot of things, but if they don't know, I can't tell what yours is, they send you to a specialist.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry. I will put the recording online, so whatever we manage.
What happens when I go out? I think I had green button.
So next to the door here, is a green button on the left-hand side of the door, and then push the left-hand door. And then as you get to the gate, you know the security hut?
Yeah.
So as you face the gate, there's not on the side, as you face it on the front, back, I don't know, by the door of that hut, is a green button, and that will release the gate for you to get out.
Push it very hard down.
Oh, I did not know that. You have to push it very hard
Push the
down.
button, but the handle.
Okay. Push the handle hard down to open it.
Do rabbonim, when they get submitted, do they have to do a written exam? Do they have like they go to college and they have?
Usually there's a written and an oral exam. Sometimes, usually there's more than one. There'll be like different different topics. Yeah. And yeah, different smichas will have different will cover different areas of law as well. So that's why often when you apply for a job, they'll ask which smicha did you get.
Right.
So
Someone it's a bit like going to Oxford or going to Sheffield.
yeah. So yes, that's smicha. Are we stopping there? It looks like it. Huh?
So we are.
You're falling
Yeah.
asleep. Looks like it. As I said, I'm happy to carry on. Or if you want to,
I like your idea, reread it at home.
you can read it, and any questions, comments, anything, put on the group. Yeah. I don't even remember what's here versus what here, because I've got 67 pages, so I didn't look at this part. I only looked at this part. So,
And with the additional reading, actually, it might pick up on.
Huh?
Some of the additional reading might pick up on.
Yeah. not that I remember when I put it in at all.
It was a good one, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Something to know about.
Don't really know to love it.